Good morning. This is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over a very, very eventful weekend at Manchester United. If you're watching on live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your comments and questions in. And if you're watching on the replay, do feel free to comment. We do reply and comment to everything that we get in the comments. And if you're back on the audio podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe on the platform you're listening on. Paul, before we get into it, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Wayne. I'm not bad at all.
Yeah, I would really like to start off a podcast like this. We're obviously going to address the elephant in the room in due course, but I want to make sure that we are doing no disservice to what we saw yesterday. Not in terms of the performance with Manchester United. I don't think we were particularly great against Fulham, but Garnacho came on. He's had a really impressive couple of weeks. He was fantastic against Aston Villa in the League Cup on Thursday. Possibly disappointed not to have been given a start on Sunday against Fulham, but he came off the bench and immediately made an impact with his instinct, his direct play, and then scores the goal at the end. We are going to be dominating this conversation talking about Ronaldo, but I do want to make sure that we start off on the right note and give praise where it's due to Garnacho, because it was a great performance from him, a great cameo and a fantastic goal. And in the moment when it's a late winner for United and things didn't look like they were going to go our way, to end this sort of half season on that kind of note was such a pivotal thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was important for both sides. I mean, Fulham have had a very good first half of the season, and they wanted to finish it on a good note. Which, given how the game was over 90 odd minutes, we have to say they deserve something out of the game.
Yeah.
But for United to have lost that game, it would have left a few weeks, and it would have been a tough few weeks for the manager in that situation. But it's amazing what the difference 3 points can make. You look where everything is, and I think we say it when the league kicked off in August, and United to be where they are, and you look at how far they're off the top, you would have said that's good. Because I don't think anyone expected United to be that many points close to the top. I think everyone was definitely expecting City to have gained an advantage. No one saw Arsenal, so I have to say it's going okay. It can definitely get better, without a doubt. And I think there's a lot of good things that you could see in the game yesterday, but there were some bits where you just know where it needs tweaking. And I'll state the obvious: January could make a difference in that little bit, but we don't know if there's going to be anything available in January. There has been over the last few seasons. January has always been a time when United have done things, but it's not always the best time. But you can just see they are just missing something. I thought Martial done well as a centre forward. You can see he comes off, he joins in, he links play. You can see one against ones. He's very good at that. The way he pushes the ball out of his feet and he gets shots off. But but the thing about it, you can't trust him, to suddenly have an injury, And there's an opportunity for him now, after all these years and what he cost at that given time, to really go and make a mark for himself. But again, you have to still wonder about his heart, really. Is his heart really in it enough to want that position so much? Because it's there available at this moment in time, but the longer it carries on, the manager's going to go out and get a centre forward. So there's an opportunity for Martial to nail something down in that position, or even nail down a starting berth at this moment.
Yeah. A quick word on Garnacho, because obviously he did so well when he came on. He transformed. It looked like United were going to plod to a draw, but he added that penetration behind the line. He was straight away going for the win. He wasn't settling for anything less. And it was that determination, literally, that determination that got him past the defender and to score the goal. Great composure to score at that time as well. What did you make of his impact?
Well, I mean, it worked out really well. You can always see it, and you know exactly what he's going to do. When you talk about someone like him and you commentate about him, I just always say, and I've said all the time, is that he's a person I wouldn't want to play against as a fullback because he's always looking to go the other side. He's going to try and get there. That there's always he could do it 10 times. He could fail 9, but there's going to be that one that might just cost you, and that's what he's like. It's a bit like an Andre in a way. Andre was one of those one of those ones you don't see anymore. And Garnacho is the first of its kind. He's a wide player, and he actually wants to do the tough job. He wants to go round the outside. He wants to, and that's what he wants to do when he runs out. He's threatened to go and really stretch you as a fullback, and I think it's great to see because it's, as you see it now, everyone is cutting inside. It's just like you think, okay, go on, and you're going to try and curl it, and it takes time and time, and it goes all over the place. Balls are going out for throw-ins, goal kicks, because they keep cutting inside, and the one that goes in, all of a sudden it's the greatest goal in the world. But they've had so many chances. By Garnacho plays in this manner of just brute strength, power, and a desire to keep going at people. So if you're a fullback, you don't want to be up against him because of the way he plays. And that's the big difference between him and anyone else in that team. I thought Elanga was going to be that one. Those first few games he had under Rangnick, I thought to myself, oh yeah, I like this boy because he's actually out wide and he's showing a passion to want to go and take someone on rather than checking back and then flicking it back to the fullback, flicking it inside. But all of a sudden, his whole game changed and he hasn't recovered. He's not the player that first started under Rangnick for some unknown reason. We see Rashford out there and he doesn't take anyone on. Well, he doesn't get past him, I should say. That's not his strength unless he's playing on the right where he can, on the left, where he can cut inside. Martial, we just haven't seen him. We just what we saw yesterday. You're kind of going, yeah, I like it, but then fingers crossed for everybody. Are we going to see him again in the next fixture? But he's got plenty of time to not to worry about that at this moment. But the biggest one is Sancho. That's the biggest one, and I don't know what's going on there at this moment in time, really, in that Sancho situation. Yeah. There's things coming up. I really don't know what's going on there, but whatever it is, it would be down to his form and the fact of he's not happy about, every time he plays, he gets taken off or he's not starting games. So he won't be happy. But there's only one person who can sort that out, Wayne. And that's himself, of course.
I did have a little bit of sympathy for him last. I mean, his form is his form, and he's responsible for that. Paddy Power put out a tweet last week, didn't they, where they were like taking the mick out of him, and I thought that was a bit low because it's a professional disappointment. You don't need to do that. Well, you could sort of pick. I know there are not that many English players in the Premier League these days, but you could sort of like take your pick out of the ones who didn't get in the squad and take the mick out of them. I think it was a bit low for that. And you don't know. We don't know. We're speculating at this moment in time with what's going on with him. And let's be frank about it. We've got a lot of stuff to speculate about in other areas. Another thing, again, Garnacho, just to go back to him, he had a really good impact against Villa as well in the League Cup. United needed to sort of put out a message. Very interesting your point of view on this, Paul, because we've talked about the pluses and minuses of changing the team around, and he did. He made a lot of changes. It was pretty much, apart from Malacia and Dubravka in goal, it was pretty much a team that he inherited. So it was interesting to see how that team would do. And to be fair, in the first half, they were really flat. It needed the changes, the likes of Eriksen coming on, Garnacho coming on, Martinez later on, to make the kind of impacts that change the game. And it does. I'm not saying that it leaves you wondering the impacts that Ten Hag's had on the existing players, but it does make you think that not as many of them have stood up as we would like to. Once they've put the actual first teamers in, like Casemiro on that, you can see the difference in the players that he's brought. And it speaks a lot to the. I don't want to say that the players have let us down with the recent performances. I don't mean that at all. But maybe they've not responded as a squad as well as we would have hoped to Ten Hag, and maybe it's been the individuals that he's brought in that have made the big difference.
Yeah, that's a fact. It is the individuals, and they've made a massive difference, and that's the reason why Manchester United are where they are at this moment is because those players he's brought in. You can see them. He's got a formation. You can see there's a structure. You can see there's a way forward for Manchester United at this moment in time. the windows are very, very important. If you judge it off of what he's done already, then if he can go out and replicate what he's done, then United will step forward because there's going to be more of his players coming in, and that there's a better chance of Manchester United improving. But you've seen in a cup game, and I think even when you see some of the substitutions he's made, and even when he's done it, and it's caused problems to some of the substitutions. It worked in a way midweek, but because there were stronger players coming on. But even the game yesterday, he makes that first substitution. After Arteta said that's a mistake. That it's gonna bring them on. Fulham are just gonna come on to him, especially Daniel James coming on. You could see what was being said to him by Marco Silva, and it proved that as well. He virtually just said to him, he wanted him just to run into that space that Luke Shaw doesn't want to go into, and he ran into there and caused problems. And you saw that the midfield lost their way. They sat back. Fulham suddenly took the game on, got themselves back into it, and looked like the more side that was going to be prosperous at any given time. And United were quite, counter-attacks as such.
Yeah.
Not controlled counter-attacks. It was more luck than by judgment, more, in a certain way. So he knows himself. What he's got underneath maybe his best 11 is maybe another 2 or 3 on top of that, and the rest of it isn't enough. For what he wants to achieve at this moment in time. And I think it's important that he stays in all the cup competitions as much as possible. I think it just adds something with the new players coming in. The first thing got to be on their mind is to come to Manchester United. They want to win something. Something, and for him, if he's content to be knocked out of the FA Cup and the League Cup because he's concerned about top 4 and maybe Europa League, then I'll turn around and say that he's not the person then who I think he is.
Yeah.
Any success with a cup in his first season, what a difference that would make to him as a manager straight away.
Yeah.
To go to the board and say that little bit more and what he needs, and he's got to be allowed. Then he'll say, "I've got to be allowed to carry on with what I'm doing. In fact, I need to improve on what I'm doing, and you've got to allow and work harder to get my targets."
Yeah. Ben says, I love the go out and play type of football, but I must admit, the more I watch Ten Hag United, the more I realise our system to fall back on helps the players thrive, and that's definitely fair because we've seen the product of that this season. All right, Paul, we've been beating around the bush. We've got to talk about it. Cristiano Ronaldo. Around 9 o'clock last night, Piers Morgan tweets that he's done an interview with Ronaldo, and the headlines are going to break within the hour, and it's going to be explosive and all that. And it has been, to say the least. It's dominated the media over the last sort of 12, 13 hours. And it's a difficult one to start off with because the first thing is there are comments in there what he's made that are devoid of context. So we won't know completely how everything matches up together once people watch and hear this interview in full. Because we all know Piers Morgan would have looked for the most sensational parts of what he could get, and they're going to be twisted and put into the context that they need to be put into context about to generate their clicks and headlines. However, we also know from the actual quite specific ways in which he's said things that you don't really need the context to sort of pick them apart. And there are a couple of headline criticisms in there. One of those is that he thinks he's being treated unfairly by the club. The second, and this pertains to, I guess, either the pretext in which the context in which he was brought back, the idea that they were going to be challenging a lot more than what they are, the state the club was in when he returned, also alluding to things that I don't want to get into on this podcast to do with the way that he was treated with when his daughter was ill over pre-season, because I think, he stayed behind on pre-season, didn't go to Australia. So, he was there, and at the same time he was pitching for a transfer. We all remember that episode. And then there's the other things where he's basically everyone is saying that he's called out the owners and saying that he's talked about the facilities. Apparently, on TalkSport this morning, Piers Morgan's come out and he's also said something about there's a lot more to do with the owners that's going to be mentioned in the thing. So Ronaldo's really not happy. So stand to wait and see what he says about that. Obviously, I can't make a comment because we've not heard about that yet. And then the third thing is he said about Ten Hag, basically in words to the effect, I haven't got the exact phrase in front of me. I don't respect him because he doesn't respect me. All of which seems like it's inevitably ending for a very swift resolution. I mean, I'll be surprised if he's still contracted by the club by the time that the interview airs. And I think is it tomorrow the first part does or Wednesday. By the time that airs on television, I'll be surprised if he's still with the club. If by tonight the club haven't put out a statement. We can get into the meat and bones in a minute, Paul. But I just want to ask your reaction as a former player. You've represented the club. You've played in front of that crowd. You've benefited from the link that you've had with United and the work that you put into United, and you represented the club with a certain dignity. You've always tried to be that way for as long as I've known you. What's your reaction to the things that Ronaldo has said?
Well, I mean, first of all, as far as I won't be watching it. I'll have no interest in listening to him. I couldn't do it because I'll just sit there and I'll be pulling faces, and it would just I can't do it. I can't watch him go and do something like that. Plus the other fella with him, I can't stand him, so I will not be watching it. When I listen to someone like him talk, and I hear people when they keep talking about respect, it's amazing. What you've got to do, and to come out and say you don't respect your manager and come out and say that, I just find it really baffling how a player how he can go and do anything like that. It tells you that all the good bits that people try to say about him, everything was virtually them just trying to cover him, really. All this fact of all the players are looking at how he's eating and everything like that. The young players are in awe of him, and no, that was someone just selling a story, to be perfectly honest, because this hasn't been hidden. He hasn't hidden that away this side of him. It's been there. I mean, is he getting a lot of respect from the players? Yes, for what he's achieved. As a person, I very much doubt it. Because he can't hide this person. He can't hide that in a dressing room. It'll be dragged out. It'll definitely come out. And he's got to remember, he's disrespected, the biggest person within Manchester United. He's disrespected Sir Alex Ferguson by something like this as well, because he was one of the advocates of him coming back. Ronaldo talked about him being involved in it. He's everything about it was about coming back because the respect he's got for Sir Alex. If he had any respect for Sir Alex, he would not have waited to go and do an interview just before he's going away on international duty. He is a coward to go and do something like that. Hasn't got to face it, hoping not to face his teammates or anyone around again. So I'm waiting to see as well how his attitude is going to be around the World Cup. If he starts for his national team, that tells you that he's got a bit of concern there, because in theory he's not good enough to play a regular starter in a Manchester United team. He certainly isn't good enough to be a regular starter in his national team. So what are they going to do about it? How are they going to look at this situation? Is the manager going to look at that and think to himself, well, hold on a minute, So I'm disappointed in what he's going to do. Am I surprised? Of course I'm not. It's been going on for ages. The moment he walked off against Spurs game, that should have been it. On a player's point of view, that should have been enough for them to know exactly 100% what it's about. But then when he comes back and the manager makes him captain, I think I said it last time. I didn't get that. That was poor, in my opinion, to allow that to happen. And how was he treated that? by going out and doing something like this behind everyone's back. when I'm seeing that he was supposed to be ill for the last 2 games, I'm kind of shaking my head, you know, about the whole thing. I mean, again, you just knew that wasn't true. It was never put out there as such, but it was never true that he was ill. It was, again, you're not playing, you won't be starting. So his idea was, well, I'm not going to sit on that bench again. So all of a sudden he says he's ill. He missed the pre-season. So if you miss the pre-season, in theory, you're not fit enough because you haven't done the work that everyone else has done.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter because all these fanboys are coming out. Oh, but he's so fit. He keeps himself fit. He looks after himself. He's fine. It's about doing the work with your teammates, doing that hard grind, doing those long runs, feeling their pain. Everything is about doing them, not on your own. It doesn't work that way, and that just sums it up. He's on his own.
Yeah.
Football. He did not win all what he's won on his own.
Yeah.
Didn't do it. All those goals he scored, he didn't do it on his own.
Yeah.
All the medals he won, league titles, Champions League, he didn't do it on his own. Until such time football becomes an individual sport, you can never do it on your own. And that's the bit he hasn't understood. He hasn't understood about sitting on the bench. You're still part of the team as well. You're still there. It's up to you how you handle that situation if you're ever needed. And when he was called upon, he ran away. It's as simple as that.
I've written a piece for the website. I'll put a link in the comments for it. Ben says here it's a sad way for things to end, and he's right for sure. So I've written this thing on the website, and it goes into a long detail of sorry, we've got another comment here from, I think it's Stell commenting. He says the whole situation stinks. I think there'll probably be a bit more coming in on that because Stell, I know, he's been a bit vocal on social media with it. But yeah, I've written this thing on the website, 3,500 words, where I've gone into all my reasons for why I think it's disgusting what's happened. But I think for me, it's Ronaldo can do and say what he wants on his platform. He's got millions of people there. He can reach those millions of people with a video where he just says what is on his mind. To go to Piers Morgan, of all people, and his history with the club is disgraceful with United. He's obviously an Arsenal fan. He's not going to miss the opportunity to twist the knife in. But people will remember he was the editor of the Mirror when they put the dartboard up of Beckham. He was the editor of the Mirror when there was a thing over the 2000 FA Cup when the club had to pull out the political pressure about the 2006 World Cup. All that sort of stuff when they went to Brazil to participate in the first Club World Cup. He sort of laid this media framework where they said, well, United will get some sympathy. And he twisted the knife as soon as it was confirmed, saying United had abandoned or that they disrespected the cup and everything like that. And obviously, I mean, I'm talking about two specific instances that he's done with United, but he's a man with a very controversial track record anyway. And the second thing is the Sun. Why do it with the Sun? I mean, it's just he didn't need to do it. And the thing is as well, it is so disrespectful to Garnacho, who idolizes him, Paul. He's scored this goal in very similar fashion to one that Ronaldo scored 14 years ago. So that would have been the basis of that conversation all night and all day today. People would be talking about that, and now they're not. They're talking about just Ronaldo. Garnacho's completely out of the picture, and I just think it's absolutely disgraceful. I've defended him. We've had these conversations where I've talked about the benefits, and I felt that he was still trying the pressing game and all that sort of stuff, and all that kind of positive argument that we've had about him. And like you said, you've looked at the body language of him, and you've kind of gone, "Oh, something's not right there." But you've sort of, well, not you, but I, as a supporter, I've sort of given it the benefit of the doubt, just saying, "Oh, that's just Ronaldo, the way that he carries himself." But now, the disrespect of the manager when he's actually come out, it does make you look at the last 4 or 5 months and think, Jesus, it's full on. And so actually come out and say that, I mean, these kind of things happen at football clubs, don't they? Don't get me wrong. Players will have disagreements with managers. Players will disrespect managers. But for the highest profile player in the country to come out to the highest profile manager in the country and say something like that, the disrespect, it's incredible. Like, it's absolutely incredible, regardless of the Morgan, the son, all that kind of thing. That's an individual to individual kind of thing, isn't it? And it's just uncalled for.
Yeah, it certainly is. And when you look at it as well, he was disrespectful to the club by using his family as a way to have a go at the club. The way talking about the way he's treated, which is absolute, rubbish. I just know what the club's about, and anything like that, they'll do everything possible. As I think any club would, but Manchester United definitely would. It's the way the club is about family, and so he's used that to have a pop at the club as well. And I will ask, and I will say that people talk about. I mean, it's mentioned. Oh, he scored 24 goals. We got to remember that the goals at the end of the season, the goals for Manchester United that season when he scored these goals was maybe one of our lowest totals over a season because the difference that he made to Manchester United as an attacking team. It was centred around him. Everything was about him scoring. Some players felt as if they had to keep giving him the ball rather than take the responsibility himself. We look at how went before he turned up. United finished the season quite well. Finished quite well, or going quite. Cavani, everything. Ollie had got that little bit right. There was something going on. The moment he arrives, things started to go wrong. Cavani lost his way. Cavani threw his toys out the pram and just couldn't. He had a long injury problem. I don't know how injured he was. There was so many problems, things that happened. Then Ollie's gone after that as well. Could we argue that the fact of if Ronaldo doesn't turn up, could Ollie have still been in his job? Because there was a progression. There was something that happened for him to go to the next bit. We don't know whether or not he would have succeeded, but there was something there. Ronaldo turning up made it difficult for everything. It changed the dynamics of something that looked like it was starting to go in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of comments coming in here. Patrick says, "Good morning, Wayne Paul. Much needed result on Ronaldo. I'm confused. He wanted to leave in the summer, but yet United are trying to drive him out. It doesn't quite correlate exactly." So the point I've made in the piece that I wrote, he said, "We have to see it for what it is. Ronaldo is extremely frustrated that things aren't going his way, and Champions League clubs are not falling over themselves to take him." Yeah, that's what I did. I've doubled down on that piece and that he wants to leave the club happy to go. It's not United's fault. It's not the manager's fault, and even Ronaldo's fault at this point that no one would take him on, because unless Ronaldo, he was basically just saying, "I only want to join the Champions League club," and it's got to be on similar money. Because if he was doing that, it was being dead unrealistic with what was on the table for him. If he wanted to go, the club were making it quite easy for him to do that, and I don't understand that situation was still the case. He would have still been free to leave in the winter and it would have been fine. There was no need for all of this. It just seems completely unnecessary. It's dragged the club through the mud. I'm going to rephrase that because I'm going to come to you in a minute with it, Paul. So let's come to the rest of the comments. Oh, Patrick just closed out saying he should cut his losses and go to the MLS, Saudi, or return to Sporting. Possibly. He'll probably just follow what Messi's doing. If Messi goes to the MLS, he'll think it's safe to go to the MLS himself,
Well, we know. Sorry, Wayne. We know that Sporting are not going to take him. Sporting don't want him. They don't need him. They do not need him. Anybody's watching. They do not need Ronaldo. But if you're talking about high energy, if you're talking about closing down, I always say closing down because that's what it is. It's not pressing. That's a newfangled word they brought up for the youngsters. Closing down, which has been in football since football started, by the way, closing down. So, in the way they play, too high tempo for him. He wouldn't last 2 seconds. The manager doesn't want him. So, he could go to the MLS. And if he thinks it's going to be easy in the MLS, it's not. There's a lot of fit, agile Americans who are going to want to prove a point. Ronaldo is going to be one of them. And if you speak to Graham, you speak to him and you talk to him about him thinking it was going to be easy when he went to America. I'm quite sure he'll say it's been very, very difficult going in there. Younger players who are hungry, fit, agile, strong. It's not going to be easy. As a PR machine in America, he'll go there and all of a sudden he'll find, hold on a minute, why am I getting adulation from everyone? Sorry, football or soccer is not followed by a lot of people. And yes, there's a load of people in America, but the amount of people, that window that he's gone into is a very, very small one of
Yeah.
fans over there. So if that's what he wants to do,
Yeah,
let him go, I would say.
you've got to have a certain personality to transcend that line as well, because Beckham had it because he had the marketing team and he was very sort of amenable to that. But Ronaldo doesn't have the kind of personality that pulls him out of football. Beckham does. So you're going to, I mean, Gerrard struggled, Lampard struggled, even Zlatan was kind of embraced a little bit, but he has more of a personality than what Ronaldo does. So, yeah, and Ben says, always seemed a risky move to bring him back. He expected if there was no Champions League, he'd won't maybe have a he didn't. Not surprising. Surely the US is an option for him. Maybe we'll forgive him. I'm not bothered either way where he goes. If he goes, honestly, if he goes to Chelsea, fine. It doesn't matter at this point. You know, there's nothing he can do that can. He can't really tarnish his legacy, and I'm saying that with all sincerity. More than what he already has done, he can't. Even if he went to Liverpool or City from this point, we're not. It doesn't matter where he goes. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And I say that with sincere sadness because I don't like saying that because it's been one of the best things having him come back. It was great. I liked seeing him make history. I've enjoyed having my nephew idolize him. I love that kind of thing. And now you move on, and he's going to let your idols move on. You have to pick a new favorite player. It's just part, and that's part and parcel of it. Ben says I think he sees himself being back to a corner, so he's looking out. I see it, but he seems in with his character. I think that's the crux of it. Paul, what I really find amusing though out of all of this, because the first thing is it's disgraceful that he's dragging the club through this, putting the club on the front page of the Sun, having Piers Morgan of all people interview him, and having him revel in this idea that he's causing some kind of chaos at United. Now, the reality of this situation is Ronaldo is a problem that United needed to solve anyway, right? It needed to be solved quite quickly. There's no games for 4 or 5 weeks. Ten Hag doesn't have the squad around him. The press aren't going to go on this for 4 or 5 weeks. This is going to get decided in the next few days. Ronaldo will probably have his contract terminated by mutual consent before he's even back from the World Cup. So he won't be back at Old Trafford. Go back to Old Trafford, you're going to have a squad that's how Ten Hag wants it, in the unified fashion, brought together by the chaos of everything that's been instigated by the press. So everything that Piers Morgan thinks he's trying to do with this is going to have the opposite effect straight away, because as soon as you get Ronaldo out, there's going to be an insular sort of bonding. This what naturally happens after times of controversy like this. I mean, I'm not saying the Cantona episodes, for example, when he was sent off twice in '94, then when he was sent off against Palace, he didn't disrupt the dressing room because the outside reaction was so strong that it bonded the dressing room, right? So that's technically what you're going to find in this case. And Ten Hag really has got an opportunity to use it to his massive advantage, hasn't he?
No, I think he has, and it's kind of taken a lot off of him because everyone's sitting there waiting for him to make decisions. As I said earlier, the Tottenham one, I thought he got that wrong in making him captain when he did come back. But now it should give him the free run and maybe just make everything easier from the dressing room point of view. So I'm quite sure it wasn't comfortable from there. He hasn't mentioned the players, or he hasn't talked about the players, because I think there was a lot there. The players would never say anything, publicly say anything. I'm quite sure he might hear little bits splattered about everywhere now that there's this belief now that he's going to be gone. But it mostly wasn't right in there. And when he was playing, was there any great belief in the way they played? When they played, when he was on the field, I don't think there was, that he was going to do enough for the team. I think the Villa game showed that. I think you saw bits of it yesterday with what was happening out there, that you could see that there's more freedom when they go forward. Players were taking more responsibilities. It looks more in the comfort zone. But for Ten Hag now, there is an opportunity for him to step forward. And so now you're asking mutual consent. That could have been done months ago, Wayne. His whole thing was really in his court. He could have, bought his contract out. Anything could have happened to stop this going on. and just wonder why he's kept this going for so long when everyone would know now that he was within himself. He was quite unhappy. But then to talk about saying the words the club hasn't evolved since Sir Alex, retired. I mean, that's got that doesn't come into it. The training ground, this and everything. Why? Just talk about the football side of it. Talk about your issues. It's nothing. Don't start blaming it on things like that. At the end of the day, you're a footballer. There's green grass. Change rooms mostly nice and warm. Decent showers. Just do that bit of it. Don't worry about all the other side because that's really not your domain. And then to talk about the situation with the owners as well, which is obviously I think trying to use as so to try and keep people with him, that to say that he's with them as well, and on that point is a bit weak as well.
Yeah. It's a bit. I mean, Patrick has made a comment, and it's something that I'm getting a lot in my mentions on social media. Oh, Ronaldo's called the owners out. Patrick says, just so I'm reading it out for the audio podcast, for balance, we have to call a spade a spade. Ronaldo hit the nail on the head about the lack of infrastructure investment by the Glazers and the previous CEO, complacence and negligence post-Fergie, which, yeah, you can say that, but I mean, Liverpool operate under a tighter budget than what we do, and they've still succeeded. Do you know? And I'm not defending the owners at all. What I'm saying is, United can still succeed if they've got the right structure in place. There's nothing, I just think it's a deflection from Ronaldo to say, "Oh, I'm not doing well because there isn't the support on me." No, address your own role in that. You've declined. It's natural. It's fine to do that. You're not the player that you were 10 years ago. You can't do the same things you could do 10 years ago. I don't think it's a terrible thing for him to admit that. But to turn it the other way. Now, I will say, I don't want to comment too much on this because apparently there's a lot, Morgan has said that there's going to be more about the ownership in the thing. I just think at this moment in time, from the rest of the content which we know, it just looks like a deflection. It looks like if there's anything that's in there, someone has said to him, you might curry favour with the fans if you sort of criticise the ownership or something like that, considering they're all going to be a bit unhappy that you dragged the club under the bus like this. Ben says Joel Glazer must take some blame for allowing this to happen. Didn't he put the move out allegedly where Ten Hag wanted him gone? I think by all accounts, as far as I know, Ben, towards the end of the window, everyone had reached agreement that he could go for nothing as long as there was a taker there. And the takers were Chelsea, who they thought were going to take him because Bowley wanted him there, but the manager didn't. I don't know if that contributed to Tuchel going, but that option might be back on the in January because Potter's under a little bit of pressure. Or, as we've already talked, like Paul said earlier, Sporting was a place where he wanted to go, but they just didn't want it to happen. So, I mean, that's nobody's fault. It's not United's fault. It's not Ten Hag's fault. And Paul said it so well earlier on. Everything that's happened with Ronaldo in terms of, he came back from pre-season and he wasn't fit. You've got to give those players who were there on pre-season their fair shake to play because they've been around the squad. They've put the odd yards in. And then once Ronaldo did come in, and he came in pretty quickly, by the way. It wasn't like he was kept out for games. He was straight back in for Brentford, and he looked like a player who didn't have a pre-season. So then he was out again for when we played against Liverpool. And look, let's be very frank about this. See how clever the Ronaldo is. But Ronaldo knows, just as he came into the side and we got rid of Van Nistelrooy for Louis Saha, and Saha wasn't as good as Van Nistelrooy, but what he did is he had fluidity and agility in the way that he played that Van Nistelrooy didn't have, and that gave a lot of freedom for Rooney and Ronaldo to benefit from. It's exactly the same kind of scenario. Martial won't be anywhere near as good as Ronaldo, but he's better for the team at present. Still asks, do we know when this interview was given? No, there was some speculation, and I don't want to go too much speculation, just on what we know from what he said. But there was some speculation that it was before the Villa game, before the Villa League Cup game, because that's why the illness has cropped up. Apparently, that they've known that this was out, and they just want him around the squad. I think, from United's perspective, Paul, January becomes a bigger month, doesn't it? If say Ronaldo's moved on, there was a talk before this Ronaldo stuff that Maguire might get moved on as well. I doubt Maguire will go in the winter. Maybe he will. I don't know. But they'd be two massive dressing room presences that are gone. If Ronaldo goes, you kind of think that I'm not saying that United need to splash cash or anything, but need to be wise and do like a good. They'll need to make a good move in the transfer market. Not necessarily loads of money, but something that'll bring a lot of goodwill around the club again. They're going to need something like that, just like a little injection to say we're moving on. This is the next phase of it, rather than just being stuck in this post Ronaldo lull, right?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely what they need to do. They need to go out and given the opportunity that they can, and then the other side of it, can they get what they want? Not just go and get someone who's going to fill a gap. Get someone who you can build on, and even if it means you go out and get maybe something at the top end, something in a higher market value, more pedigree, that person can still learn, and he comes in if he wants to switch it, flick it around a bit. So he's got someone there he can use for different reasons, and that's the next stage that needs to happen. The Ronaldo bit needs to be put to bed. I mean, the World Cup obviously will take a bit away, and then once the season starts, it's going to be mentioned again. The one thing that's not going to be is going to be said by anybody. It looks like United miss Ronaldo. They missed the Ronaldo of 10 years ago, without a shadow of doubt. The Ronaldo now, they definitely will not be missing him, and it's proven every time he hasn't been playing. But they don't, that they don't need him. He's more of a hindrance, to be perfectly honest, if anything. And and that's the way I say it, because it's the fact. And the thing about it, when you're a footballer or anything really, any job in the world, is that when your time, when it isn't there anymore, you adapt accordingly. Roy Keane knew his injury in his knee, and so Roy adapted his game. Roy changed his game, and Roy looked $1 million when he changed his game from being that lung busting box to box, getting in everywhere. He adapted his game, and he got cuter and cuter on how he played. His positional sense got better, where to be to give him the best chance to win the ball, where to be, and he learned all that. Ryan Giggs, from a flying winger, suddenly stepped inside and become a little bit more central, and you saw Ryan just dropping inside and playing in there. Sharpie done that in a certain way as well. It's about knowing when weaknesses are starting to happen, and it's about you showing strength of mind to take that on board and adapt accordingly. And you see the difference with Ronaldo. He lost that change of pace. And when you looked at his feet in that role of trying to drop off and play, that wasn't in his game. No different to Wayne Rooney. Wayne tried to drop off and be that kind of player. Wayne couldn't do it because his fitness and energy levels weren't good enough when he done it. So all of a sudden, Wayne stepped away from playing as well. It's about knowing it and accepting it. Ronaldo won't accept it. He thinks he can do that little bit more. Ibrahimovic is another player. He comes to United, and I'm kind of going, wow, what's going on here? But I'll tell you what, he done himself justice when he come. He knew his weaknesses. He knew that he had lost a lot of his game. He had to adapt his game, and he adapted his game. He's still at AC Milan.
Yeah.
Be it that he's out injured at this moment in time, but it'd be interesting what happens when he's fit, what they will do. But he knew how to play of someone of that age. He knew that for his age, he is fitter than anybody else of that age. The difference is, though, that when it comes to sharpness, agility, that bit in there was what he used to get by. He knew that was so important. Teddy Sheringham, as I always mention, Teddy, when you talk about footballers playing their head, was one of them as well. And there wouldn't be many better than him. And Teddy, as his career went on, Teddy seemed to get better in a certain way, or he levelled out. But Ronaldo won't accept that, Wayne. He will not accept that. And that's where that bit comes from. And he needs someone to tell him. And I don't know if there's anybody who can be honest with him and look at him and say to him, you're not good enough at the moment to play at this time, or you can't play that level anymore. You cannot play and get out of it what you want. No one's out there is brave enough to tell him, because otherwise he wouldn't be doing what he was doing. And he wouldn't be acting in the way he's acting. Because the one thing about it is not to burn bridges. You don't want to burn bridges in life. You definitely don't want to burn bridges. And we can all come away quite bitter. It was easy for myself to do that, to blame everything. But lucky enough, I looked in the mirror quite early and realised it was a bit of me. Ronaldo's got to look at himself in the mirror and ask himself the question. As much as he might look in his face quite young, as well as he might look at it in body, but when it happens about producing that quality, what's needed to play for Manchester United for them to go forward, he hasn't got it.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait and see what happens with the rest of the interview. I don't think we'll be doing a podcast next week just to talk about the contents of Piers Morgan's interview with Cristiano Ronaldo, but I will be watching. I'll be listening and trying to pick up what is made of it. The one thing I will say is that you mentioned it earlier about the building bridges and everything like that, and I think that he's done that with this interview. I think that whatever comes out, I think that it's just going to be too much, and it's just so sad because the legacy that was put in place for him. I mean, he didn't create that reputation of the seven who was created for him. You know, there was Robson, Best, Cantona, even what Beckham, the ones that the club don't really talk about, like Coppell and Morgan. These players who all wore the number 7 shirt with distinction, they contributed towards the legacy of it. He walked into the club and took the shirt and made it a brand. And fair play, he worked hard and became the best player in the world, but it was still an opportunity that was given to him because of the work that had been done before him. And doing what he's done over this last 24 hours, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, I just think he's absolutely destroyed the legacy which he built up at the club. He's going to be a football great, without a doubt, but I don't know if I'll ever be fully comfortable calling him a Manchester United great. That's it for this week, guys. Thanks for sticking with the pod. I know I've had, a few audio and video issues with my pod. I think it's the Wi-Fi connection. Video seems to be cutting out on my end, so it's probably time to cut it on the pod, but for today. But hopefully it's not been too bad or jarring an experience for anyone watching or listening. We'll be back soon anyway, probably at some point in the World Cup to comment on how things are going out there. Even the World Cup seems a more preferable thing to talk about than Ronaldo at the moment in time, and that's going somewhere to saying how bad it's been. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe. If you're watching live on YouTube, on Facebook, on the replays, feel free to comment because we do reply. If you're listening back on audio, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. We'll be back very soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and stay safe and stay well.